All right, I see we have one who has indicated a desire to present something to the board in the open forum. On that occasion, uh, wonderful, thank you. But I will read the ground rules whenever we have someone presenting. Open public forum will be placed on the agenda for regular board meetings. That would be the second one a month. During this part of each regular school board meeting, up to 30 minutes time will be allowed for district constituents to address the school board. Each person is asked to identify him or herself by name, and if he or she represents an organization, to name the group. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Each presentation may have up to 2 minutes of time. The school board will not hear complaints about individual school employees or permit discussions of such matters in an open meeting. No response, reaction, or action shall necessarily be taken by the board during the open forum portion of the meeting, and the school board will take no action at a meeting on an issue raised for the first time by the public. But I must hasten to add that for sure you will be heard. We are listening. So, with that, I think we have a comment from Gary, right?
Right.
Only one. All right.
Is this thing on? Yes. Okay, good. Well, as you know, I'm a past candidate of the school board, and as a board, there are a number of things that you as a board have done that are positive. However, the current situation at the high school is ridiculous. You as a school board are the supreme authority even over the superintendent, and you people need to physically go to the high school to see for yourself what is actually happening. There has been a student walkout already, and there could soon be another one, or worse, a riot at the worst. You people need to get with law enforcement to work out a solution. Laws have been broken. I urge you to attend to the situation quickly. I have a lot more to say, but for the sake of brevity, I'll cut it off.
Thank you, Gary. And pursuant to what I mentioned about not responding in kind, as it happens, if you look at the second page, effective and efficient operations, we have a policy review of that involves that subject. So that's a happy coincidence, or perhaps not so happy, due to this the seriousness of that issue. All right, celebrating success, Employee of the Month. We have 3.
So I'm Penny Yonke, and this is Julie Sager, the Employee of the Month for August. And I have had the pleasure of working with Julie for 12 years, and that's as long as I've been here. She's been here way longer. And she truly is amazing, and we couldn't run our program without her. But this is what the person wrote. Julie is eager to help everyone who walks into the Adult Education Center, assisting them in registering for English classes or encourage them as they take their next GED test. She makes the ABE department a great department to work in with her support and positive energy. So, she is awesome.
All right, I'm Tyler Johnson, principal at Southwest Middle School, and I have the honor to present the Employee of the Month for September to Krista Oneman. Krista is our reading teacher in the 6th grade. The thing that I personally like about Krista is that she's always willing to try something if she thinks it's best for students. And so just this year, she's included book talks on our Tiger Talk video announcement series, where she talks about a book, shows a little video to encourage students reading. She does a book club with students as well during her own lunch, where students come and talk about the books that they're reading. And looking at school-wide initiative to do a school-wide read-along as well, and Ms. Oneman is a part of that process as well. And here's what her person wrote. It says that Krista encourages her students to read and has a lot of amazing ideas when it comes to getting the students engaged in reading. She has done a book tasting event where the students are at a table and have a few books to look at and read some of the books and put down on their paper what they like about the book. She has about 8 tables set up and about 6 books per table. Students enjoy this and find some books out doing this activity. So, thank you, Krista.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Nikki Severson, the building principal at Sibley, and this is Barb Beastman. She is our administrator assistant. Barb wears many hats at our school. She's wonderful, always jumping in, going above and beyond, helping anybody and everybody. That warm, welcoming smile when you hear the buzzer to the door, greeting parents, family, the mailman, whoever. She goes to the door, greets them, goes above and beyond helping our guest teachers or guest paras that come into our building, making sure they know where to go, where the bathrooms are, all the necessary things. Filling them in on our Friday lunch that she orders for our staff. We'll sign up for Jake's Pizza. She orders that. She makes sure that our guest teachers and paras know all about that. She works closely with our parent group, our Sibley Share group, offering support to that group as well. Her and her husband are at the functions, helping set up for our families. She just does a ton. I can talk to you all night long, but I know you want to get out of here. Couldn't do it without her. She is amazing and wonderful. The person wrote, Barb goes above and beyond to accommodate staff, students, and families. She is organized, flexible, and a true team player. Her professionalism, strong work ethic, and communication skills are outstanding. We are so lucky to have her at Sibley. Thank you, Barb. Thank you.
Nikki, before you leave, you mentioned that who nominates these distinguished recipients? How do they get nominated?
Anyone in the school buildings can nominate them, or
So we send out a monthly email from the HR department and remind people to nominate their awesome colleagues. And we review them once a month, so any staff member in the district can nominate their colleague.
Okay, thank you. Super. All right, number 5, approval of today's agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Been moved by Kim. Seconded by Bruce. By the way, Jill is not physically here, but she's zooming in from sunny Arizona. Hi, Jill. All right, any discussion on the motion to approve the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. The first item on the agenda then is number 6, consent items. You've had a chance to examine these. Any suggestions to remove? Hearing none.
Move to approve the consent items.
Been moved to approve by Bruce Olson, seconded by Mr. Deezer. Dennis, any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Now, reports. Begin with Superintendent Wagner.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Chair Score, directors, student representative, teacher, community, and students. Congratulations to our staff of the month. That's amazing to hear all the positives, and that's a great way to begin. That's a segue into our mission statement of to ensure individual academic, social, emotional growth that leads to engaged citizens and lifelong learners. I want to bring us back to the social, emotional growth, and I think that's going to be important as we talk about goal number 3 this evening. And it's something that is very important to myself as well as a cabinet and to us as a board and a district, and that is goal number 3. and that's ensuring systems are in place to provide a safe environment for students and staff, physically and emotionally. This is absolutely essential, and this goal is very important. We will be reviewing the district policy tonight. A lot of the district policy aligns to state statute, but I do believe we need to continue to go back and revisit our bullying process. And this policy is at the heart of Goal 3. One piece that you'll hear tonight is from Principal Dibble and his team on a report on some of the things at the state of the school, of the high school. There's also some data in there, but what's not written in there are the student voices. And we need to ensure that each student is visible, heard, and they feel safe in our high school and in all of our schools, socially, well-being, and emotionally and physically. We did hear from students last week in which they felt they weren't heard. We heard from them in their actions, but what we need to do is create an environment in which the students feel safe to be able to speak up, safe to find that adult that they have a trusting relationship, to be able to come and report when they're not feeling safe. No student should ever feel unsafe because of their, under the Human Rights Act, but their gender, their race, socioeconomic status, their disability. No student should ever be invisible in any of our schools. And it is essential that we continue to do better. So no, as superintendent with cabinet, we will continue to provide systems and structures in place to support goal number 3. There is a bipartisan grant coming out over $1 billion that we'll be looking into to provide additional support. But no, this is something that we take very serious. It's dear, it's a priority of mine as a superintendent, and we will continue to do better. So with that, I want the community, staff, and students to know you are heard. We will move forward. I met with my student superintendent leadership cabinet last week, and one question I asked, what can we do better? How can we put systems and structures in place from you as the youth of the high school? What can we do from your perspective? Their voices are important. All voices are important. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Wagner.
I want to go ahead and I have a couple more.
Okay.
I just want to congratulate school board elections. Welcome to the continuing, and welcome new members continuing. Director Kim Nelson, congratulations. Director Dave Clark, congratulations. Welcome Dave Valerio, as well as Gary Schindler. And thank you to all those who ran and had interest in joining the board position. An update to the community. We will be engaging in the school calendar discussion. The timeline, that's a proposed timeline for the cabinet, or is for the new school calendar, is as follows. The cabinet has had discussions. We've talked with the student cabinet for input, just what is their perspective from a student. We will convene a calendar committee in November. We will present a proposal to the board in a study session, first read December 5th, general leadership discussion December 6th, and present a final proposal to the board vote on December 19th. And finally, I do want to end on a positive. The fall musical, Beauty and the Beast, was just amazing. I have cold chills now sitting here even speaking about it. For those of you who were able to be present, it was just outstanding. And I know we often hear stories about the high school, but what we need to do is accentuate the positives and continue to tell our story. And our students, staff were just incredible. Miss Diane Haney and all, I don't have a hat on tonight, but hats off to you and a standing ovation. Thank you for the volunteers. And when truly in the line of be our guest, it was an opportunity, and it was very privileged to be sitting as superintendent in the seats, knowing that our students are both amazing, beautiful, and talented. So thank you to all those who participated. Greatly appreciated. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Wagner. Bruce, you want to start with the board reports?
No meetings this past month, but the fun time of year for me starts November 29th with Teacher of the Year nominations starting, and I'm honored to be part of that committee.
A couple things within the last month. I was part of our MSBA pre-delegate assembly, which was an online Skype meeting. I will be part of the delegate assembly here in the 2nd and 3rd of December up in the Twin Cities, where we vote on different items that take the Minnesota legislature in that works around school districts in the state of Minnesota. I enjoyed being part of the Riverland Community Impact. Kim, thank you for inviting. Speaker at the Pathways 8, and as with Superintendent Wagner, Diane Haney, the staff, the students, everyone did a fantastic job. I don't think we missed one in 25 years. If we have, this was one truly not to have missed. Hats off to all of them. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry to announce that I did miss the fall musical because I was in Baltimore visiting another production, my grandchildren, it's probably a close second to the fall musical. We have a fine, outstanding tradition that goes way back in the productions that we put together, that the students put together, and I've been to just about all of them, and it's remarkable to see the talent that's presented there and the enthusiasm, and they just love what they're doing and they're good at it. So congratulations to everybody that's involved in that, parents, students, staff. It's an outstanding event. I was also at the Riverland event last week, as many of us were, and Riverland is an amazing place. I'm a huge advocate of pre-K through 14 education and beyond that with our community, with our adult education program, community ed program. So it's nice to see all those pieces in place, and it's a really impressive place. It makes me wish I were a high school graduate recent again and have a nice place to attend and further my education. I did attend an insurance committee meeting last month or early this month, and that was a presentation by Aaron Casper, who is our consultant on our health care plan, and was happy to discover that the plan is working out very well, and we are in good position as far as our health insurance costs are involved. All right, that's it.
Thank you, Neil. We had a policy committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and so we're going to talk, that's on the agenda, so we'll talk about that. I did attend the Taco About Careers. It was a career fair that was offered at Northbridge, and it was a great event, and the district was there. Business Ed Committee, I was not able to attend. I don't know if you were, but I know that some of that work, the Talk About Night and career fairs coming out of that Business Ed Committee. Thank you to all the district personnel that were at Riverland the other night. It was a great night to kind of showcase, and I would invite any community members or anybody in the district to come see us. I'd be happy to give you a tour. We have made some changes out there, and it's a great facility, and we love sharing that space with our ALC. And then Education Foundation is coming up. We're having a retreat to do some strategic planning, so look for that in our December meeting. And then I, too, am excited to start the toy process.
I also was unavailable for the business ed. I've kind of been gone for 2.5 weeks, so it's good to get back into everything, but it was a good break. Kudos to everybody who ran for school board, took the time and effort and energy. My hope is that even though maybe things didn't go the way everybody wanted, continue to be a part of the process, continue to work with the district so we can make this the best district in the state, and I think we can do that. It was great to see our talented students Diane Haney, all the staff that work with our arts and entertainment side of the school. That is awesome, and we're getting ready now to kick back off into the athletic winter season, so lots of good things to see and happen. Also wanted to comment, I appreciate the information. I know Kathy has been really good about ahead of time sending out consent item information and pieces. That really is helpful for me. I'm able to look at it, see it, and ready to go, and the detail of your information as well with the school calendar. It really keeps us ahead of the game and communicates to everybody. So thank you.
Now it's on. All right. Just a short report. I attended the policy committee meeting that Kim referenced, and those policies are on the agenda this evening, so I'll let Kathy discuss those.
I'm riding solo for the student board report today, but as you guys have mentioned, the musical just happened, which was really awesome. I'm actually part of that. I was stage manager, so I was in the background. If you saw me, I wasn't doing my job correctly. And so what's happening right now is our winter sports seasons are starting up. Girls hockey has already started, and our winter activities are also starting up, as well as captain's practice for most of our boys' seasons start like a week or two after the girls, so those are happening right now. And as for the status of the school right now, as our open forum mentioned earlier, we had the walkout, and then we are also in phase 2 of Operation Beyond Time, and it seems to be working. So hats off to whoever figured that out. Flexes are starting to go a little bit better. We're in the middle of our food drive right now, run by Student Council, and we're seeming to have some pretty good results. We're also starting a No Shave November fundraiser. So we're all sorts of food shelf fundraisers happening right now at the high school, and flexes are starting to challenge each other to like games and stuff like that. So we're starting to get a lot of inter-flex things, and flex givings are happening tomorrow, including my flex. We're bringing snacks and having a little because they're really trying to get us to focus on building more of our family within flex like we're supposed to have. And so we're trying to work on that. And then I'm sure every parking lot is like this, but the parking lot is horrible at the high school. The first few days, it was like, that was like the rose. But other than that, we seem to be managing at the high school, so.
Amber.
All right, so I just have a rundown of some of the things that have happened in November. Parent-teacher conferences went really well at the elementary level. Middle school and high school, I know that high school's having theirs tonight. We were able to have a Veterans Day program in a few of our buildings, and those are always fun to see the kids involved and to have the veterans come and be represented and recognized in our buildings. Southwest has been celebrating because they have their floor back, and I know that the students and the staff are excited about that. It smells wonderful because it's beautiful too. We got to see it when we were there for Sibley had our Prairie Fire Theater last week, and we were able to kind of check out the floor while we were there as well. But our Sibley kids had the Wizard of Oz last week, and it's not the same as the Beauty and the Beast. It's a little bit less, but we did it in a week. They do it in 4 days, so they did a really good job. They were very proud of themselves, and it was fun to see them on stage doing something that is a little bit not normal for them. Hoping that they will be the future Beauty and the Beast, though, and they'll want to do it in the future. High school, they had the National Honor Society, and it looked like there were a lot of students that were recognized, so. And then the Beauty and the Beast. So a lot of positive things that have been happening in the buildings and with our kids.
Okay. Thank you. Excuse me. Curriculum and instruction. Oh, I'm sorry. Jill, why do I'm just horrible at remembering that we have somebody remote. Go ahead,
That's
Jill.
okay. Thank you. I attended the policy committee meeting as well. I'm also glad to hear that the canvassing meeting was handled in a more appropriate way, in my opinion, than last year. Also, to information, it would be helpful to have the information slides sent to us ahead of time when we do receive school reports, because it is a lot of information to digest in a short amount of time, and so it would be nice to have those slides ahead as well. I've also been contacted by community members regarding some issues that are going on in the district, and I'm looking forward to the presentations that we'll have tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jill, and again, my apologies. Now, number 9, curriculum and instruction. District goal, ensure high-quality core instruction, focusing on Tier 1 of multi-tiered systems of support. First, from the high school, Principal Chris Dibble.
Jill, I understand you wanting to get the slides. The last edit was made probably 26 seconds ago. So they are hot off the press. We wait for the most current numbers possible. So I'll do my best to go slow so we can get through this with the best information you have. So Chris Dibble, principal at the high school. I know we've had some news lately. We'll get into that eventually as we get into the slides, but I'm going to start with a rundown of what's going on in our building. So student demographics-wise, we are currently at, as of this morning, 1,188 students. You can see the breakdown by grade level, 199 seniors currently. That does not include the 7 that are currently on the online academy who will graduate with us, for a total of 206, plus any ALC seniors who will join us as well. 203 juniors, 249 sophomores, and the ones that are blocked there by our Zoom, 274 ninth graders, which is currently our largest grade, 263 eighth graders. So you'll see that we have a bubble coming there of some larger classes. They stay pretty even. I believe both 6th and 7th grade are at 247 as of this morning. So you kind of see we flatline there with a couple small classes coming now. In terms of student demographics, we are flipping all over. Here they are. We are currently at 62% white, 23% Hispanic Latino, and 9% Asian. That is a large number. 62% white is the lowest it's been in a long time. So as we grow, we're getting into more of the cultural competencies and making sure that we are a welcoming environment for all of our students. And as these demographics shift, we have to do training and we have to learn how to make all of our students comfortable in the school. I put this slide up. Free and reduced lunch currently at the high school is 42.6%. You'll notice the district's at 50. Same with EL, same with special education. What happens at the high school is we have some parents that opt their students out for whatever reason it may be. For free and reduced lunch, often it's stigmatic, where you don't want to be considered part of that population, so you don't enroll in the program. EL, most of our students are signing out, but the ones we do have are very often level 1 and level 2 because they just got here and don't have any language skills. Special ed, also, I know of 3 or 4 students who have signed out of services this year simply because they think they've made it this far. That makes instruction very difficult for those students who have had support for 10 plus years and now are in a position where they're on their own. And so we have to look for those little ambiance things that happen and make sure that we're meeting each of our students where they are. Part of the FLEX program is to build this relationship so we know how to best help our students.
Forgive my interruption, but as a former high school teacher, are the staff informed of those students that were special ed but now are, as you say, on their own, so that they can maybe appreciate the situation the student's in?
Yes.
Okay.
They are. We have 141 and a half staff members. That half is a funny one. We go by full-time equivalencies. So we split a social worker with the ALC. So it turns out being some fractions. We don't actually have a half person working, but it's a half person who works a half day. So 74, a little bit over half of our staff are teachers. And then you can see a rundown as you go down the sheet of where our adults are. The reason I put the number up is because it's a large environment with a lot of adults helping support students. And I want to let you know that I know every one of these staff members are in this because they want to see our students do great things and be safe and be collaborative with them. And I can guarantee that 141 and a half of them are all on the same page with how we treat students. So attendance and discipline. Here's our attendance list, and that's the statewide on the far left, Albert Lee Public Schools in the middle, and Albert Lee Senior High School on the right. 85.3% attendance. That's 90% attendance or better. That's the that's the breakdown. And so we are at 82.9% of district, 79.2% in our building. So here's the interesting bump as we start looking at data. This is 8th grade on the far left, 9th grade, 10th, 11th, and 12th as you go. If you take a look at the 9th grade and 10th grade bump, there's two things that these students have faced in their past that kind of make it, we're kind of retraining them on how to be on time, how to be a part of a society. One of them was, pretty recently, these people were in middle school during COVID, which are the years that we set up. You know, you move from elementaries where you're with a group all day, every day. Maybe here and there you go to music, you go to PE, but you're in a group. And in middle school, we go from moving to classroom to classroom. They missed this training opportunity. So we're doing a lot of training here. The other thing that these people faced way back when they were toddlers was the Great Recession. So there was family struggles back then as well. So this group of kids have really had a struggle in learning some of the skills it takes to be a member of a society. So we are doing our best to catch up with them and make sure that we make their time at school focus on what it's going to be like once they get out of high school and enter a career or a college path. Going back to that one just for a second, I have some interesting data we found too. 25 students total of our 1,188 make up over 25% of our missed hours. 33% of our students have absolutely zero unexcused absences at all. 81% of our students are in class 95% or more of the time. And 90% of our students right now on track are to be in the 90% or greater area. So that's an 11% bump over the data from last year. So
Excuse me, could you just repeat those numbers for me? They're not written, and I want to make sure I hear them.
Yep. Do you want them all or just the good ones?
Just the slides.
Okay. So 25% of the students represent 25%. 25 students represent 25% of the missed hours. So a quarter of our students, or a quarter of our absences are all from 25 kids. 33% of our students have zero unexcused absence, have not missed a class without being sick or at an appointment. 81% of our students are in class 95% or more of the time. And for that line that the state looks at for attendance, we are currently at 90% of our students having a 90% attendance rate or better, which is an 11% bump over the 2021-2022 school year.
So the 81% that are in class 95% of the time, so you're not talking about, so the ones that are actually in school, so the ones that are excused from school that day, they're not in this number?
Nope, they don't count in that 81%.
Okay, so of the students that are in class on a particular day, 4/5 are in class?
Over 95% of the time.
Over 9?
So 4/5 are there 95% of the time or more.
Sorry, you interrupted me and it cut off. So
okay.
81% of the students that are in school are in class 95% of the time?
Yes.
Okay, so that's 4/5 of the students that are in the building are actually in class?
No, this is daily attendance.
Okay, so this is daily attendance.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. No.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Jill, I think what he's saying is that 4/5 of the student body are in class 95% of the time. 95.
Or in attendance on any certain day.
No,
Yep.
not on,
Day and-
overall
Yeah.
95% of the time.
That's day and periods per day.
Okay, thank you.
All right. 2 minutes. The discipline report. Right now, most of our discipline comes from these D categories over here: disruptive, disrespectful, defiance, and disorderly conduct. This is day-to-day interactions following general expectations in the building. That's where 65% of our office visits come from. If we run down there, 6% fighting. Of course, I'm trying to zoom in and it's not working. Mental health, other misconduct, 1.6% for vaping, 2.3% drugs and alcohol, 7% for harassment or bullying, attendance issues 5%, and then misuse of electronics at 6%. So most of the office visits we see by type is happening due to disrespectful behavior or some sort of disorderly conduct with each other or with a staff member. 9 students make up 25% of our office visits. 91% of our students have had 0 office visits at all. And 7% of our students have more than 1 office visit. So what we're really talking about is focusing on the ones who are struggling with school. Here's incidents by type. Discretionary is what he calls it. He is, by the way, Sean Gaston, our dean, is the one who put this data together for us. We use the discretionary. We're using the reports that the state uses for their out-of-school suspension numbers. So here's our out-of-school suspension incidents by type. The discretionary, again, there at about the 65% mark, 3% for drugs, 17% for fighting, but you notice only 7% of our referrals were for fighting, but 17% of our out-of-school suspensions. And then we go from there. So 7 kids make up 25% of our out-of-school suspensions. 21 kids make up over half of our out-of-school suspensions. 2.5% of the student body have had an out-of-school suspensions, and the top 10 students make up 33% of our out-of-school suspension days. On average, 0.67% of our student days have been lost to an out-of-school suspension, so less than 1%. And I know in an email that board members received this afternoon that I was copied on, I know that the person mentioned by grade, you can take a look at the out-of-school suspension incidents by grade level, with the 8th grade being on the left and the 12th grade being on the right. So there is a maturity issue as we work through this process. 8th graders just have a tougher time in the environment with all the action that's going on. So we work with them closely to try to teach them rules and expectations.
And could you repeat the time lost again, please?
Can you clarify that one? I'm not sure what you're asking.
Oh, I thought you said something about hours lost due to out-of-school suspension. Maybe I didn't hear you.
Oh, the last thing I said was that less than 1% of student days have been lost to OSS.
Okay, what does that mean?
If you take a look at of all the attendance that's there, out-of-school suspension accounts for 0.67% of those days. So when you add up all the absences, OSS accounts for less than 1% of absences.
Okay, and discretionary means what again, please?
That's the disrespectful behavior, defiance, and disorderly conduct.
And at what level, at what point do the students move from being in class to being in school suspension, if that is a thing, to being out of school suspension?
They
Or
go,
disorderly
they go
conduct?
through a long process. There are only two reasons they get automatically receive out-of-school suspension. That is a fight or the breaking of a law, or any use of nicotine or marijuana products in the building, or sale of nicotine or marijuana products in the building. Other than that, when we're dealing with behaviors, you first get sent from the room, you come down to the office, you meet with our deans, either one of them. We try to return you to the next class available. If you make a return trip, we put you into a small room off of the office, which is our in-school suspension room. If you cannot handle the expectations of that room, that's when we move to the out-of-school suspension for those behaviors.
And if a student is found using nicotine or marijuana on campus, how long are they out of school?
Anywhere from 2 to 5 days.
And what do we think they're going to be doing when they're not in school?
The community has sent a strong message to me that they do not want these products in the building. And to do this, we make sure that the students are held accountable for their actions.
So why would they be home 2 to 5 days rather than in school 2 to 5 days suspension?
I don't have staffing to watch kids for 2 to 5 days for nicotine and marijuana.
And do you have the space? Because I know that was something we talked about.
I would say we don't have space for that either. My room has 3 desks in it that we use for in-school suspension.
So no space or staffing to keep these kids in a school environment in school. So they're basically out of school for up to a week. How many students at a time do you feel are, or how many students at a time are out of school suspension?
I don't have that. I don't have that with me.
Do you have a guesstimate at all? Is it?
Less than 1 hand or less for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, I think I would also add that those students who have committed something that results in out-of-school suspension, if they were in school suspended, then they would be traveling in and out of the building and making whatever it is they did available. So it's a concern for the students.
That's true. Because they're also off of transportation. They are out when they're out of school suspended. They're also not coming to any of our activities.
I have a quick question, Mr. Dibble.
Yeah.
So we see like a lot of struggles with the 8th graders, like in general, like even like Link Crew, like we were breaking up fights on day 0 of school. Are we like, is there any like thought of maybe changing the situation of having 8th graders at the high school, or even just like how we treat them at the high school because of like how much we've struggled these past few years of 8th graders?
I'm sure it's a discussion that could happen.
Because I've like, that's just like one of the things that always people bring up. So
We are one of 3 schools in the state that run this model of 8th through 12th. It's Mound West Tonka. It is Red Wing and it is us. And as of next fall, we'll be 2, Mound West Tonka and Albert Lee, because Red Wing is abandoning the model next year.
Is there a reason why we use this model above? Like, is there like was it just space, or is there like a thing that like pushes for it that says it's like helpful? Like,
I don't have that answer. It was done before I was in this position. Oh, Jill's here.
I could answer that because I was actually on the board when that happened, when 8th grade was moved to high school and 6th and 7th to Southwest. And to my recollection, it was mostly due to space. The classes were getting smaller. I don't think there was anything presented as far as that it would be, other than accessing some of the high school programs. I think it was mostly space for the kids, and at that time, the concern in the community was for the eighth graders themselves, and so that they wouldn't be influenced in a negative way by the upper class people. And so at that time, eighth graders were kept secluded pretty much from the rest of the school, different lunch hours, etc. Is that still the case? Are eighth graders have their own lunch? Are they pretty much secluded from the other grades?
They are not. I'm looking back for my historical references back here, and I don't believe that was ever the case.
Well, my daughter actually, I was having a conversation with my daughter last night regarding this, and she did not have eighth grade in the high school, but she was in high school when eighth grade came up, and I do remember at that point, it could have been eighth and ninth together, but they were separated for most of the day as much as possible.
I feel like doing that, though, might also cause more problems. Like, if we segregated the eighth graders and we're like, you are your own little entity, I feel like that would not, that would be taking a step backwards in our, progress of trying to, become a community as a high school, because the eighth graders already feel out of place because they're, teenagers, preteens. They don't really understand. They're going through, the early stages of understanding who you are, and getting pushed in a little bubble of you're not like us would be the opposite of probably what you would want to do with people at that developmental age. I feel like.
Thank you for adding that, because you are absolutely right. It's a troubling time no matter where you are, what kind of arrangement it is. And Jill, you're absolutely right. As I recall, I wasn't on the board at the time, but I think I was in the classroom at the time, or between classroom and board, and it was a matter of space. The pigs fit into the holes better that way. We had a new building large enough to accommodate 8 through 12, and then it became sensible to have 2 grades in the middle school at Southwest, including 6th grade, and then the 4 elementary buildings accommodated K through 5 nicely. So it was a nice fit. And you're right also, the concern was for introducing the 8th graders into the high school with the fear that they would be corrupted by the evil seniors and juniors, and now it would appear that it's kind of the other way around.
That's what the data would tell us. So because I knew this, the fighting has been a point of emphasis, I did pull some information last night. If you take a look at the middle of this slide, that was when Tyler Johnson was a dean at the high school with no fights. It was also COVID, and there weren't any kids in the building. So not to take that away from Tyler. But if you take a look, if we go from left to right here, left starts with August of 2018 and ends with November of 2022. So you can take a look back in November of 2018. We were having up to 9 violent incidents a month. And so if you take a look at the trend data here, it's pretty much on line with where we've been over the course of time. It's not okay. Everybody who fights or gets in a fight, we work with Albert Lea PD. We give disorderly conduct tickets. We do give 5th-degree assault tickets for these types of incidents. So we are doing what we can to make the environment a safe place. We knew coming in this year that it was going to be a tougher crowd with the 8th grade because of the data we saw coming out of Southwest. Southwest had a tough year last year as well, coming out of COVID and bringing kids in from their environment on the outside. I also hear of many fights happening outside of the building that we are trying to teach kids that this isn't the way to solve problems. It's not the way to get things done. So it is a constant expectation that we try to figure out other ways to solve issues than with fighting.
Question. So are these on school property then? Is this high school property? Is that what this
is high school property.
And any time of the day, or?
We don't have much that happens outside. We had one incident, I think, 2 years ago in a bathroom at an activity. That was on here because where we're pulling this from is the suspension and law enforcement referral information. So this would have been that would have been included in this.
And how confident are you that you're capturing all of the fights that happen?
quite confident.
Because I noticed you have four hall monitors,
Yes.
and what hours and what duties do they have?
We have one at the pool door at all times. That's our main student entrance. We have one right now who is our one male hall monitor is during passing time at the start of end of each hour is in the boys' locker room because we do not have a male PE teacher at the current time. And the other two are circulating, or 2 or 3 are circulating the building. In passing times, they are by the bathrooms.
Also, to help dibble out here, I constantly see like different office staff members like walking throughout the hallway, dealing with different situations. Like even 7th hour today, like I think it was Gaston was up there being like, "Hey, let's go to class." Like, it's not just those 4 hall monitors. It's also teachers that are walking to the TPC or walking to the printer. They're like, "Hey, where are you supposed to be?" Or they're in their prep and they're walking to go and eat lunch or something. Like, it's not just those 4 hall monitors. It is quite literally the whole staff of the high school kind of helping out where they can.
And if you look at it by month, Jill, on there, you'll notice that August was 4. That's high for August. We were only in for 2 weeks. And like she said, one of them was on day 0 because we had an 8th grade fight at Link Crew. But you'll notice it's kind of coming down. The mention was made of Operation Be on Time Phase 2. This is something we put in because of the hallway behaviors. When the bell rings now, we play the music for 3 minutes. The bell rings a minute after the music shuts off. The teachers close their doors. At that time, anyone in the halls has to come to a room to get a pass, tell us where they were, and they get escorted or a pass to class. I've had feedback from the teachers and now students saying how much better the hallways are. Do the students necessarily like this? Definitely not the 30 who are in our hallways all the time. And I've gotten some pushback on that. And so I'm sticking with it though because a majority of our students, of the 1188, a majority of them like the building better with less students in the hallways. And you can kind of see the fight numbers as our months progress coming down because there isn't time for them to stand around and get into these types of situations.
And the students that are in these situations, the multiple students per each of these incidents, then do they immediately go out of school suspension?
Yes.
And for how long?
It's usually 5 days, but we don't necessarily do 5 school days. It depends on how many times they've done it. We can go up to 10 days with a person who's done it twice.
And do you find that the students who are on out-of-school suspension are more engaged in school time by time, or do they become more disengaged?
They become more disengaged from fighting.
From fighting?
I don't know how they do academically right offhand. But they do, the fighting behavior stops when they've been out that long because school is one of their, school is a very social place for them. And part of the reason they're doing this is to support their social group. So we do see a reduction in behaviors after the suspension.
Yeah. Just one thing. Is it possible to go back to where the chair calls on us because people are wanting to talk and we can't? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Can you use your microphone, Mr. Chair? I'm sorry, I didn't know I didn't have the floor.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't know I didn't have my mic on. You're absolutely right. But I noticed Dennis wanted to for a while back, and Ron did, and then we'll get back to you, Jill. Dennis?
Thank you.
No, Ron?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to reinforce, as we're going back to our mission about the individual academic, social, emotional growth, at least to engage citizens, systems and structures are absolutely essential, and to ensure that we're supporting each student where they enter in. And you see the 8th graders and you see multiple data points, but that's what the multi-tiered systems of support. Our first goal is to really ensure what is that Tier 1. And then, as Principal Dibble mentioned, Tier 2 and Tier 3, what are those additional supports that we're providing to students? The students that may need additional supports as we talked about, or some follow-up. So that's important that we see data up here, but these are individual students, and we need to be having conversations about the success of each student. Also putting systems and structures in support, as we mentioned last meeting, around suspensions. So having an alternative instruction room, really not correlating the word in-school suspension versus what does that alternative instruction room look like, and then the REACH program. Really thinking about those Tier 2 and Tier 3 data points. So those are the pieces that Principal Dibble will be referring to, and that is the success of each student, and what does that look like, and how do we provide those additional supports. So thank you, Principal Dibble.
Okay, Joe, anything else? Joe?
So if I just heard that right, Superintendent Wagner, so we're going to be looking at alternatives for more supports in the school environment for some of these students?
Yes, and that, thank you, Director. That is the follow-up. We will continue to enhance the opportunities for students and think differently. And you heard the Operation Be On Time too. That's, the data was showing that the first round was not having an impact. It's consistency, staying committed, and following up and support. So how do you then set the expectations, provide that support, and then hold the students able to meet those expectations? And that is what this REACH program, as well as the alternative instruction room, provide those additional systems and supports to support the learning environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Not that we need any more data on grade levels, but here's the last 5-year trend in violent behaviors and fighting. The blue being 8th grade, the red being 9th, sophomores yellow, juniors green, and orange being seniors. So just another trend data that shows that our students who struggle with self-control are the ones that are engaging in most of these behaviors. And one more discipline slide for you here, just to kind of take a look. We were looking at gauging how we do. When I was a dean many moons ago at the high school, we had 2 rules that we followed: 5 for fighting, 10 for drugs. So you can kind of see how there was a bigger bump back in the average length of suspensions and days missed. This one goes, the most current one is on the left and the past is on the right. You'll see once again that Tyler Johnson drop there in 2020, 2021. But going back to that, when we were actually in school, you can kind of see that we have reduced the number of days that our students are being suspended based on letting students come back sooner if they do a reentry meeting with parents, or using some of our weekend days to let situations settle down. So we are doing our best to reduce the number of out-of-school suspension days based on individual situations where we treat each student as an individual instead of just hitting something the same every time.
Sorry, can I just ask, so on this incidents and days missed, so just to get a feel for this, so Q1 of this year, there were about over 100 incidents and over 300 days missed. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
And then it's going backwards.
And it goes backwards, yep.
Okay, so it seems like in 18 it started higher, it went down during COVID, and now it is back on the rise again.
Well, there was a small drop between Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep. One final slide having to do with the bullying and harassment reports that we receive. Very often we are not able to tell the public or tell students in the building or tell teachers what actually happens. So I was going to use this time to let you know what happens when we receive a bully report or a harassment report. So when we receive a report, whether that be in person or anonymously through the Crisis Go bully report, the information is collected by deans, principals, counselors, and social workers. This includes interviewing of students. This includes the collection of video evidence using our very good video surveillance system in the building. All evidence is documented. We include law enforcement when required. Anytime we have something that could break the law, we go across the hall to Adam and he helps us with the investigation. It may seem very often like we're doing nothing to the person who reported because we are not allowed to share any data or we have to keep confidential the information that we do with that student, whether that be a suspension, whether that be a discussion, whether that be a parent phone call, we are not allowed to report back to the alleged victim what we did. So very often that looks like no action, when in actuality, this is done every time we receive a report. It is documented on paper. Mr. Wagner has access to all reports if he wants them. We keep them on Crisis Go, which is our online system. We work hard, and every person, these deans, principals, counselors, and social workers work very hard every time they hear of a student being mistreated. Wednesday morning when I was meeting with the social workers and counselors, I think they were the ones that were most hurt by the story that ran Monday, because they know the work they put in to make this school safe, and they know the amount of time that they take to make this happen. And I stand by the staff members that we have at Albert Lee High School to make that environment as safe as it can be. Does some stuff get by us? Of course it does. But we can't solve problems we don't know about. So the best way to get things taken care of is to identify any issues and let us do the work that it takes to make sure that each and every one of our students are safe. We offer mediation between parties when possible, but very often an alleged victim does not want to meet face-to-face with the bully. And so once again, it may look like we're doing nothing, although we are dealing with the situation with the policies we have in place and making sure that our school is as safe as possible.
Okay, Chris, thank you. Any other, Dennis?
I think, and one of our biggest challenges is because of the laws and regulations with the privacy. One of the things I see happening though too is our ability to react to social media issues, or that, especially if it's off-site, off-campus, there's a lot of times we might know what happened, but legally bound, you have to follow through. We know that kids are out there that have a lot of issues, but what's the best way we can work with them? You know, you hear the sense that, well, we're kicking them out of school for 5 days. You know, that is, it's the right thing to do to protect the kids at the school, and it makes a statement. But the challenge is, now they're at home, and if they're not getting guidance or help at home, it's too bad there's not some collaboration or the way the community can come forward and find a place for those students to be when they're on suspension. Not saying that we have to send a teacher over to teach them, but we have to be able as a community to try to work and help that. So challenging task and can be overwhelming, but it's nice to see that we have the guidelines that are followed and a lot of time and energy go into it. Can we do better? We always can, but how do we get those kids? And that 8th grade is just mind-boggling, and again, it's a maturity level, and we just got to keep working. But to start the year doing the training with the kids, and all of a sudden you're in the role of enforcers, can't be fun. So thank you for the info.
Other comments? Yes, Angie.
All right. Well, thank you for this. These issues have been probably the most common questions that have been brought up to me, and it's helpful for me to hear this. Very interesting information. And I don't envy your job at all. It's got to be very challenging. My questions are, at this point, what can the board do to help you in these issues, and what can the community do? Are there resources that you need? Are there policy changes that maybe we wouldn't think of that would be helpful for you?
I think in terms of board support, just know what we do. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, you know, it does appear like we're doing nothing. I get it. I've been, you know, that's my Facebook persona right now. I know what it is. I do nothing here. Believe it or not, I'm not a huge Facebook fan anymore. I don't read it a lot anymore. But we do as much as we can with the information we're given to make our students safe. In terms of parents, if you see a 379 number come across your phone, please answer it. It could be a good thing, but most of all, it's a communication thing. And I know that both of our deans have spent hours on the phone with parents. Every time we have these out-of-school suspensions, we meet with the parent to bring them back in to try to get them back in a couple days early. I think communication is important. I think parents and teachers, administrators, deans want what's best for the students in the community. So please work with us. When you see the number, don't hit the red one, hit the green phone on there. That would be the most helpful.
Jill.
Thank you. Thank you. So are you also going to be presenting, the testing scores and graduation rates, or is that going to be
It's the next slide.
Oh, so we're still going, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so to this point then, so could you see the need for another resource officer?
District-wide or building-wide?
Building.
I think Adam does a great job, but it is difficult when he gets pulled to the ALC or Southwest.
Okay. And how do you view the role of cell phones in the student discipline issues at the moment?
I don't like them. Yeah, I don't like them. But it's what we're trying to do with the cell phones. I think we said this with my last State of the School address last month. We're trying to teach them to use them appropriately, and they're not catching on. I stopped calling it an iPhone a while back, and I started calling it the Fight Recorder 11 point whatever, because that's what they think they're for now, is documenting fights. I know about all these Instagram accounts that are out there. We report every one of them we can. And you just can't keep up. And then, Uncle Mark Zuckerberg likes to say, well, freedom of press. They can do whatever they want. Well, not in a school you can't. So you got to be careful there. So we're trying to teach them to use cell phones appropriately. Once again, some family support there. If we could get together and get a whole bunch of parents together to do some of these presentations, I think that would go a long way for the community.
I have to say, I agree. I don't like the phones either. And I was on the board before we had phones in the classroom, and then they were just in the locker bays, et cetera, and now they're everywhere all the time, and I just don't see, I don't see the benefit personally from that, from what I'm hearing. Couple other questions. So you mentioned the COVID and the recession impacting this cohort of students. Is that something that you've based on? Is there some research about that, or where are you basing that?
Just circumstantial. We know they came through those two. I haven't done any in-depth research on it. I just know that these students both lived through COVID and the Great Recession.
Okay, so it's kind of a professional guesstimate at this point?
Yes.
Okay, and I appreciate that. And then as far as the free and reduced lunch stigma, it's been a thing there in the high school for a while, and as the students get older, that they we anticipate that the family demographics haven't changed that much as students get older, but for some reason they're not applying for the free and reduced lunch program, which does impact the district funding as well, and supports that we can give the students. Do you find any areas where that stigma is coming into play? And I'll just say this, so when a few years back, helping some students register for athletics, and at that point, there was a reduced fee or no fee if you were free or reduced lunch, but they had to actually say that to the person right there in front of everybody, because of course that person, the registration person, didn't have that information for privacy issues, but it backfires, because then the student has to say in front of everybody else registering that they qualify for that. Are there any areas that you're kind of noticing right now that could maybe add to a stigma type issue?
Actually, no. I think it's just from the past, because now they never have to say it out loud. We send the sheets home, and even now I believe there's some new statutes coming up that are, if a student's on medical assistance, they are automatically going to be enrolled. So I think the schools and the districts and the state have come a long way in destigmatizing this, but it's still just, it's hard to change culture overnight.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, there's a lot of truth in that statement. And so when we're talking about the culture that's kind of evolved there at the high school too, it's not going to change automatically either. But I do think we do need to look at more innovative ways to address these problems. And I guess one final statement I'll make about that right now before we move on is that I believe the community does not want substances in the high school, but in my opinion, substances are still there, even when a certain handful of kids might be out of school suspension over and over. And so, I think we do need to revise whether we need more space, we need more staff support, we need more community engagement. Somehow we need to do something a little bit differently on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Our distinguished student representative has been nervously looking at her watch. You have a comment or question?
It was back when she mentioned adding another resource officer, and I feel like that is one of the things that would have a very big reaction. It's anytime you see more than just Officer Khan in the building, you immediately are like, what is happening? No matter if it is just routine, someone stopping in and checking in with him or catching bases. If you see more than the person that you are used to seeing that's in a police uniform, you are going to immediately make some sort of assumption about what is happening, even if that person becomes a normal person to see in the halls. And I feel like unless it is absolutely necessary, I feel like adding another resource officer is not the solution that we're looking for unless it is deemed necessary for safety. Because above all else, safety. But like for culture-wise and for like having not this pushback against having these resource officers within our school and as a person to reach out to. Because at the end of the day, they're not just there for problems that happen within their school. They're also someone for you to reach out to. So I feel like adding another person, unless it's like absolutely necessary, might cause a little bit of a, I don't know how I feel about this from like the student body.
Thank you. And Kim, I think, and then Angie.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point earlier about data. When you talked about COVID having an effect on those 8th and 9th graders, I think we also need to look at class size. Those are the two biggest classes we have, so that's more bodies. And when you have more people, no matter what it is, good or bad, you have more incidents. So I think there's a couple, and that is data, so that you can measure that.
Thanks.
I will be quick. I had a question that I would be curious to hear Chris's answer and our students' answer too. And that is just an idea that I've heard from multiple people. I actually ran it past Neil earlier and got his thoughts, but I heard it again today, and that is the idea of having adult volunteers come in and just be there and help keep the peace in the hallways. Would that be helpful, or would that cause more chaos?
I think it would be eye-opening. And if they can pass a background check, I wouldn't turn them away.
I feel like it would be a very much, because we were talking about this in my English class today, actually, about how we are our own society within the school, we are our own little civilization within Albert Lea. We are living by these extra sets of rules, and we are living within this, we are all working together to try to function. Do we always function? No. But we are not, when you walk into the building, you are walking into the new world that you will have for the next 7 hours, that you have usually 5 days a week. And it's one of those things of like having people understand what it's like in that building would help the community understand what it is like in the building, because it's easy to sit on the outside and not understand and see a few things and either misconstrue them or just not understand them, and that's totally understandable. But when we bring this sort of understanding and we pull back the curtain and let people understand what it's actually like in the building, then we would start to either get the community support that we maybe need or the feedback that may be necessary from the community to actually fix these problems that the community is very concerned about.
Yeah, we have in our handbook, one of these steps we have is to invite a parent in and walk their children to class. We are yet to be taken up on the opportunity.
Thank you. You do a wonderful job of reminding me why I so much loved being in the classroom with good students. Ron, you had a comment.
Thank you, Chair Score. I just wanted to reinforce that we also know there is research out there about the students that have not gone through proper transition. That's why middle school exists. That is a transitional time for a lot of our scholars. And there were many of our students that did not go through those transitions from 5th to 6th or to that true middle school, junior high. So that's where we need, and that you're seeing that in the data. And that's, not to minimize it at Albert Lee, but that's a national piece that they're working on. And even knowing some of our kindergarten students that are now in our elementaries in 3rd grade that really didn't go through those foundational pieces in kinder. So there's a lot of our students, and that's why going back to the multi-tiered system of support and providing those supports for our students. And then second, I know absent systems and structures and expectations, putting more bodies into a situation is not going to help you. You have to start with system structures and expectations and supports. And that's what I've worked with Principal Devlin and his team to really ensure that those pieces are in place so we are supporting the students. The students are visible. We know the students by name, and we've created a conducive environment of trust. So that is essential as Albert Lea High School moves forward. Thank you.
We're a little more than half, Neil. I think we're okay. Thanks, Director Score. So I'm going to start with MCA data. I'm going to give you the rundown of the data here, and then I'll tell you why they appear low. What I want you to look at, though, mostly is the trend of the way the line's moving. You'll see that the state, the district, and the high school here in our MCA math scores are pretty parallel. And so it's going down. That's not a good thing. We want to work on our math. Oh, I'm moving it there and not here, of course. Same with reading. You can see there. You can kind of see there's dots. There's a COVID miss there, 20 and 21. Also, some reading here, some parallel lines as we move down. And then science, good job in our district here with a little jump in the science with our new elementary curriculum in place. We saw a good jump in that elementary science. And we are actually not dropping as far as the state did there on that average. What hurts us the most with our MCAs is our participation rates. Very few of our students take the MCAs. Did you take the MCAs? Thank you. I appreciate that. Our participation actually last year, you can see, jumped a little bit in math and in reading and not so much in science. Our participation rates are very low for the Albert Lea Public Schools, and it's a culture. It's something that we do here, and we opt out of testing. And I'm trying hard to figure out how to change that culture, because the tests really do for a student. They're not going to keep you from graduating if you do poorly on them. They're not going to get you scholarships if you do well on them. But what it does is gives the staff a chance to look at where we need to improve and what we can do what's best for each student based on the trends that we get from this MCA data. And so I think our biggest push is to get the participation numbers up so we can get some real data back to figure out where we need to improve our instruction. And so that's my take on MCAs. Any questions there?
Just real quick, if they don't take the test, it counts against the whole group. They get a 0 basically for it. So then our averages in the community basically tank.
I believe that's true.
Do we have any plans in place or ideas of plans of how we could sort of stop this culture of not taking the MCA? Because I know as sitting being in school and leading up to the MCAs, it's all people talk about is, oh yeah, I'm opting out of the MCA. Oh yeah, my parents opted me out. It's this culture of not taking it anymore, and if you do take it, you click right through it, which is just still not helping. But
It doesn't help us get feedback on what we need to do better for you, that's for sure. So no, I don't know how to change that, that culture overnight too, other than to tell people that, you know, the test can't hurt you. It can only help you and your siblings coming up, so we can do a better job of teaching you. And if you are planning on taking an ACT or another test, standardized tests have skills that you need to learn in order to take them well. And so the MCAs are designed as standardized tests, so they will help your test taking later when you take more high-stakes tests.
Part of the challenge is going to be, and the state has to look at it, the MCAs have been around for a long time now. During COVID, they went away. They're coming back. The state needs to decide what do they want with that data, and they need to make it worthwhile for everybody, because as a student, if I'm focused on my ACT or another college entrance exam, I'm going to naturally put my effort in that versus probably MCA. But should I take it? Yes. Parent influence, other students' influence probably plays a big effect, sounding like you're hearing, you know, well, I'm not taking it, and then that passes on down the line.
Yeah, and I know even like the PPST, which is the pre-professional skills test, that's the pre-ACT test that has scholarship based on it, I think we had less than 10 kids take it. And I know that my student in Owatonna they had less than 10 people take it in Owatonna as well. It's like there's actually scholarships tied to this one, and people just don't want to do the standardized tests right now. Which moves us to our next set of slides, tests that people maybe do want to take, and this is a change we made a few years ago, giving students a chance to test where they should be tested. So you can see last year for the 21-22 year, we had 123 students take the ACT, an average of 20.5. We're looking to get 23 is considered college ready, and so that's our goal for this year, is to increase that number to the number of students who are going to get a 23 on the ACT, and therefore be considered college ready. Now, all the juniors took this test last year, so you know we have more than 123 juniors from that first slide. So what we do is offer 2 other tests. So here's the information on the ASVAB, which is the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude and Battery Test, which is given by the military, but is not just a military test. This is a test that we thought was the best test for those planning to enter the workforce right away out of high school. So what we got here was some very good feedback on, if you take a look at the red line down the middle, the 3 to the left, the verbal, the math, and the science, are where our students finished in those 3 areas. 50%, this is a norm reference test, so 50% is average. So you can see the line at the top is that 50% range. And so as you go across, you can see we're a little bit stronger in word knowledge and paragraph comprehension, and we're very strong in auto and shop. That's the students who are taking these tests, okay? These are the students that are taking these tests because they could enter the career force right away. So what this tells us is there's a good contingency of students out there that need to focus on our career and technical education programs in order to enter the workforce right after high school. The other test that we offered was the AccuPlacer for those going to going for a 2-year degree. This was offered by, and I keep changing it on my computer and not the start, sorry about that. The 3 red lines here are, and Kim can probably help me here a little bit, because the AccuPlacer is pretty new to me, but the 3 red lines, anyone who scores over 242, which is the middle red line, is ready for any liberal arts certification at Riverland. Is that right, Director Nelson? Thank you. The bottom red line is anyone who scores above that can start with the basic English class, and anyone below it may need some remedial help. I've narrowed these here from 200 to 400, which is where the scores range. So the one's not a blank. That was a score of 200 because that's the lowest score that can be there. So what this is telling us is that a majority of our students planning to go to a 2-year college are prepared for it, but we know we have some help to give them in reading before they move forward. There's also 2 math ones on here. The QRAS, which is Quantitative Reasoning, Algebra, and Statistics, a similar chart there. and then the advanced algebra and functions. And depending on the program you go into, matched with your reading score is where you have to start with your basic studies when you get to a 2-year institution. Does that sound like I'm right? Excellent, thanks. I did a lot of hard AccuPlacer work coming into this one because it is a new test for me that I don't know. But offering these 3 tests for our students is, I think it's something unique that isn't done in a lot of places, but it really takes our pathways, our pathways idea, and lets our students focus on where they want to go starting in, as freshmen and sophomores, but really in their junior year. If they're ready to do something different, and we don't have to put everyone on a college track anymore, we can make sure that we're giving them a choice to go in a direction that they feel they want to go after high school.
The plan is to continue to use this as like the college classes entrance like qualifications thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, I was just wondering.
So what we have to do with the state is have one goal. So we revolve that goal around the ACT. But we're digging into the data in all 3 tests to make sure that our different levels of classes are concentrating in the right places to make our students successful after high school.
Thank you. And is there a way to compare against state averages for other kind of averages for these AccuPlacers or the ASVAB?
Not that I've found. The ASVAB is that 50% line is the state average. Now, I remember taking the ASVAB as a 10th grader way back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, but I don't know if anyone else did, but we used to give them to all students. And there was a much higher, you had a lot of students going over that 50% mark because only our students going into the workforce and may not be as academically strong, those scores are going to tend lower to the national average.
So are you saying that in other places, the whole student body might take this kind of a test, or?
We do offer the ASVAB to all of our students, but it's a voluntary test.
So wouldn't nationwide it be the same then with only the students who are interested in that kind of a track would be taking it?
I think it depends on the locality, on the school itself. I know I took it as a sophomore because we all took it.
Thank you.
I think for the AccuPlacer, if you wanted to get some data around how Minnesota specifically is doing, I think Minnesota State Colleges and Universities has AccuPlacer data for college entrance, but I can get you that information.
Okay. I know the big piece of it is what do our students need so they can enter in it, they don't have to take anything remedial and spend dollars on those. So those were the numbers I was looking for there.
Do not students who are in our CIS program take that test?
Yeah, they need to take it to get into it, yep.
Right.
I did eliminate those scores from these. I only did the ones that the juniors took last spring. I did not take, I have all the information from the ones who took the CIS, but I concentrated on the ones from our testing day for juniors. So graduation rate is the next slide up here. You can see the statewide average there is pretty steady, right about that low 80 mark. We are currently at 85.6%, which is actually above, the four-year graduation rate is actually above the state average. Our goal is, of course, 90%, so we have to, we're still working to get that forward, to get that a little bit higher.
So what comes into play with the school district then? Is it the ALC?
I believe the four-year graduation rate brings our online academy and the ALC into it, I believe. I'm getting some head nods.
These would be the 4 years. So even if a student's at ALC, if they're not graduating in the 4 years, then it would show a lower amount than for the district?
Yes.
Would the green part about how it's the district, how we're talking about the kids who aren't graduating, would that also take into account to the kids that are opting out and going and getting a GED instead? Is that how that's lower than our our high schools?
That's part of why ours is in that 85.6%.
Okay.
So our next set of slides here is some celebrations. I had Mr. Gaston put together a very colorful map for us here. The blue lines are Q1, the red lines are Q2, since we put Operation Be on Time Phase 2 into place. So these are the reductions in tardies and absences from Q1 to Q2. So you can see a big shift there. You can see it starting to edge up a little bit, but we are getting close to a holiday. And if you've never been in a school around a holiday, you'll know that there's some ticking up that occurs in missed classes. So the trend line is the big yellow one that we're looking at, and we are very happy with those numbers moving forward. As we set expectations, we expect all students to follow.
The challenge you have also is with the flu and everything else going around right now. I mean, those numbers look great, but we always have to keep that in the back of our mind as we get into.
Yep, and I believe these are tardies versus the date. So these are just this tardies. So, yeah.
Jill, did you have a question?
I was going to ask that. So these are just the hourly tardies and absences during the day?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So more celebrations. We have an amazing increase in the involvement in the student council. They're doing great work, putting on events for our students. I feel some renewed school pride with that. You know, we had the fall festival out at Hammer where we watched a movie, had events. It was well attended. You can see more with the dress-up days and everything we're doing is there's just more people participating as a whole. I think the Flex program, advisory program, like was stated earlier, is growing. It's getting better. The food drive, the No Shave November is all going really well, and that's all about supporting the community. And then the connecting to our history with the Education Foundation, we have the screens up. If you go to albertlee.touchpros.com, you can get a look of what that looks like from your very own computer. We have some amazing stuff going on in the building that make the building look really flashy and put a new form of communication out there for all of our students. Opportunities for growth, there's always plenty. Like I said, we want to increase participation in assessments to give us a better chance to get feedback, to know how we can improve instruction. And with improving instruction, I want to continue to grow in our attendance and suspension numbers. That's part of our high reliability schools level 1 area, making the school safe and collaborative at all times to get our students in the classrooms, and then focus on improving instruction in all of our classrooms, which is part of our high reliability schools level 2, which we're going to do some great things with here in the next month, including an instructional round, which is when teachers visit other teachers' classrooms to get an idea of what's going well. And we're going to all participate in those right now, between Thanksgiving and the winter break. So we are looking forward to that as well. That, chair score, will conclude the slides. It's all up to you now.
Thank you. One last question to just say, sure. So on that last slide, Mr. Dibble, you said continued growth in suspension numbers. What are you looking at for continued growth in suspension numbers?
Well, a reduction. Reducing the overall number so we can keep students in school the best we can.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The ALC.
Good evening. I'm Johanna Thomas, principal at the Area Learning Center, and so tonight we're going to take a look at some of the information from the Area Learning Center. So we'll get started on that. This is our demographics. The top part are the different race and ethnicity. The bottom is our free and reduced, special ed numbers, English learners. Is that enough time for that? Yeah, okay.
114 total?
Well, so that is probably the October 1st numbers. We're right now we're around 97. So that's probably before we had a few kids graduate, some other students have left, that kind of thing, so.
I have a question. Principal Thomas, do you know how many roughly are enrolled into us from other districts of this number?
We usually have, I didn't gather that right now, so I'm going to go with what I am thinking. I would say we probably have less than 10 students, probably around 6 or 8 students truly from another district that live outside of the Albertley district. And we do partner quite a bit with USC, and there's quite a few students that come to our credit recovery program, especially in the summertime. They had a bus this summer that came to the high school for credit recovery programming. We are not a very big staff. We have one of each of our content areas. We have a part-time social worker that we share with the high school that comes to us in the afternoons. That was a little more of an increase from last year, so that's been really helpful because she's there every afternoon rather than a couple times a week. That's been a huge bonus for us. She works with our special education students and our general education students. And we have a full-time counselor, and I'm calling it a 0.2 for our work-based learning. Our work-based learning teacher comes over a couple afternoons a week to work with our students in our work-based learning program. All of our content area teachers, they have their innovative programs license, which allows them to teach outside of their content area if they were to need to. Most of that you might see if we have elective classes. If it's a science elective, they're going to be with the science teacher, but there are different times we do have a lot of career classes or some career classes, and anybody can teach those. But if I were to need anybody to teach outside of their content area, that license allows that to happen. Our credit recovery teachers, which I'll talk about in a minute, two of them that teach credit recovery at the high school consistently in our credit recovery program, they have their innovative license as well. And we have a paraeducator and an administrative assistant. So this is our attendance data, and it's a well-known issue among area learning centers that we struggle with attendance. If you look at the history of attendance with our students, if you look student by student, attendance has been a struggle for years for a lot of students. And so 24%, that's the latest data. I had to pull that. I had to dig down in there. So that's not on the MDE website or our data site yet, but that's what I found for 21, 22. So 24% of our students attend 90% or more.
Is that only in person, or do they still do some online work there at the ALC, or not so much anymore?
We are not this year. We are back in person, but this year's data is not on there. So yeah, last year when some students still could opt into working from home, if they were working during their class time, then they were counted for attendance. So when I look at comparing other ALCs and their attendance, we're right in line with where everybody seems to be. It's a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge, something we're always working on. And it's really, building relationships and feeling safe and starting to feel successful. And then we catch them. So, but we welcome them. If we haven't seen them for 5 days or they're coming in at 10 o'clock, we welcome them in and are happy that they're there.
And what does the count mean? Is that how many are enrolled on that day?
Oh, that was, so the data, if you look at the 2021, whatever the last census report or MARS report that was done, that was our actual count, was 97. 97 students was our enrollment. And this is our graduation data. And so you can see I've set it out for 4-year, 5-year, 6-year, and 7-year. ALCs are, I feel it's really important to take a look at the graduation data after a student's graduation year. Many students that come to us are a year behind, 2 years behind, and they have a lot to do to earn that high school diploma. So you can see it flips back and forth. I don't really have a good reason for that yet. If you look at the 4-year data, you'll see it kind of flip-flops. It goes 52%, 38, 63, and then 30. So, but then when you look at the 5-year, you know, it's a larger number. When the 2021 year was 30% for the 4-year graduation rate, and then the 5-year was bumped way up there to 76%.
Number then, let's just use, for example, 2019, 2020, 63.9 in the 4-year, 63.9 in the 7-year. So that would be an accumulation number to the 7th year. Is that correct or not?
So those are cohorts. So if you look at the 17, 18 4-year group at 52%, and then if you look at the 5-year, you have to go down. So in the 18-19 school year, that's that prior year. That's our 4-year. So a few more kids graduated in the 5th year.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Yep.
Some celebrations. We have really continued to grow our targeted services summer programming, and it's been rebranded this year as Tiger Tales. So when I refer to that, you'll hear Tiger Tales. In the summer programming, it is for, it says kindergarten through 8th grade. It's really if you're entering 1st grade and then through entering 9th grade. We had 328 students last summer consistently participate, and that was our enrollment. We added Phi-Ed, music, a counselor, success coaches, and continued to partner with experiential education. So we were able to provide a lot more services within our time frame in the summer. During the school year, the last couple of years, we have really had a difficult time having our Tiger Tales, and so we are back at having programs at Lakeview, Hawthorne, and Halverson. In the past, the history was we either had it 2 days a week, Monday and Tuesday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We are at 4 days a week. So that is really great to see the program starting back up during the school year. For credit recovery is a program that is either after school during the school year or in the summer for students that have not passed a core class that they need for graduation. And so those programs, the credit recovery program is underway right now. It started October 3rd. We'll go through May 9th. It's at Albert Lee High School, Monday and Tuesday from 3 to 4:30. And again, a strong credit recovery program really needs to have all 4 content areas, and we do. We have for the last few years in the summer and during the school year. So we have math, science, English, and social studies. We also have a paraeducator that is working with any students that require para support. We typically have between 45 and 60 students that will attend on any given day, so you might have a student that's only coming on Mondays because they work on Tuesdays or something. So we have a lot more students enrolled in the program, but that's what our attendance is typically on a Monday or Tuesday. Summer credit recovery, we had 190 students participating. And again, we had a special education teacher and we had a success coach working with students as well. At the ALC, our work-based learning program is doing really well. We have 30 or more students that are actively earning credits with that. So that has continued to grow over the last few years in allowing students to earn credit through working, and quite a few of our students work a lot of hours. Also, our early middle college program over the last few years has seen quite a few CNA pathways. We had one student doing the EMT pathway, and then we've had a few students just doing the liberal arts and general coursework with that. We don't currently have anybody in our early middle college program. That is like PSEO, but the requirements for that are much more lenient for alternative students. For like their AccuPlacer scores, they don't have to make that same cut score. And the purpose of early middle college programs is so that students at alternative programs can experience career and tech education with a little more flexibility in those kinds of courses. Opportunities, we are really having a lot of conversation around our elective credits right now. A lot of our students, we're transitioning younger students, 10th graders. We've always had a lot more 11th and 12th graders. We have more 10th graders coming to us as that intervention is needed and behind in credits. So we're really looking at what can we do with our elective credits and to provide more opportunity for them. We use most of our electives are on a web-based program that we use, and we'd like to, there's not a lot of opportunity for social emotional health within that, and we'd like to expand some more career and work planning types of electives. So a lot of conversation going on this year with that. We'd like to grow our early middle college program. Working with the counselor on some strategies on doing that. So I'm sure, Kim, we'd probably have some great conversations around that sometime at the coffee cart. So, and then expanding opportunities and partnerships with the Career Force Center. They really are, that's an untapped, there's a youth advisor there, and she's been consistent the last couple years. So I think the timing is right for us to really partner with them more and see where they're right around the corner from us, and just a lot more interaction with her over the last year and continue that. So. Any questions for me? Jill?
Thank you. As far as having more 10th graders coming to you recently, can you identify kind of what kind of categories of problems they've been having that they've been getting behind at that point?
So I think it's important that we look at what we can do as an area learning center to be there when the kids need us. And if a 10th grader needs us early in the school year because it's appropriate and they want to come, then we need to make sure that we've got the environment and the program for them to be there. And so our numbers are staying a little bit steadier this year because of that as well. And so that's a good thing. So our hope is that we provide the right place for them to get to graduate on time. We're intervening a little bit earlier with those, with some of the students. Yep.
And can you talk to us about discipline a little bit, or suspensions? What's the situation like at ALC?
For discipline, I've had one fight this year, and I've had probably 3 or 4 situations of students being caught vaping or having products with them, and I've had one situation with illegal substance, with marijuana.
And do you operate under the same, if there's a substance violation, then they're out of school suspension?
Yes, they 3 days.
3 days?
Mm-hmm.
And do you see a need for a shared resource officer in your building?
I don't think somebody there on any sort of full-time basis is needed. So far this year, I've been really lucky. Adam's been available when I've needed him, or it's been very soon thereafter. But I do know that as soon as he leaves me, he's off somewhere else because there's been a call. So he's definitely busy. He's available when I need him, whether it's just by phone or if he needs to run over and speak to a student or do something that way.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, and maybe you had said this, but can any student in theory attend ALC if they want to, or do they need to meet certain criteria?
It's a great question. They need to meet certain criteria. Some of the main ones would be mental health concerns, truancy, a parent, if they're a parent, if they are at risk of graduating. So we are clearly a program for students that are at risk of graduating. Homeless, EL, so those real high risk, those high risk areas. Not that EL students are at risk, but that could be a factor of them not being able to graduate.
Joanna, when a student is working off-site for credit, what are some of the businesses they're working at?
Cargill, a lot of the fast food restaurants, and a lot of the assisted living places.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, just sorry, one last question. When you mentioned truancy, of course, the situation's different at ALC, but are there any truancy issues at ALC, or is it just the students' own pace, whatever they can do, it's not a problem?
So truancy is based on attendance. So if they're on truancy when they come to us or working with the truancy officer, they would continue to do that. Typically that drops off at the age of 17. But if there's other law enforcement issues, then attendance is part of that probation, and so that kind of hopefully keeps them coming to us if that's part of something with law enforcement that a student might be working with.
Okay, thank you. But they wouldn't, with their, the lower amount of attendance that you have there, about 25%, that wouldn't in itself lead to a truancy issue?
Well, it would be based on, yes, we would file truancy on a student if that were most of the time they're already working with truancy if they're coming to us as a 9th or 10th grader.
Sure, okay,
Yep.
Thank you.
We just continue to struggle with attendance even as they get older, quite often. Thanks.
Next, policies for review. And I think I would suggest that we listen to all of them and then move on all of them at once. Does that make sense, Kathy?
Voice the holdout. So you have again, the deep dive from MSBA on a group of policies. Most of these have a minimal change, and one has a more significant change that comes to us from the U.S. Department of Education Office for Civil Rights. So starting with policy 401, an addition indicating that this policy for equal employment opportunity is for all school employees, and these were reviewed by the subcommittee a couple weeks ago, and I haven't received any questions, so I did not provide any additional information to the board. And then adding a legal reference in that policy. Moving on to policy 402, disability non-discrimination. No change in the policy, additions to the legal references. Policy 520, student surveys. This policy has some legal reference changes, some spelling out of terms. On page 2, a reference under E that the school district must not impose an academic or other penalty on a student who opts out of participating in a student survey. And you will see that that comes under student surveys in general, so all student surveys, including, I think the board asked at the subcommittee meeting, does this include surveys students give? And yes, it does. Then towards the end, we look at page 7, a delineation of what kind of notice we provide parents, so it is more explicit. We have had to provide notice to parents. It is very specific here that parents should and students notice of the policy at the beginning of each school year and after making substantive changes. Item B is the most significant in that the school district must give parents direct, timely notice when their students are scheduled to participate in a student survey by United States mail, email, or another direct form of communication. So we take this to mean that we simply can't put in a newsletter that we're conducting a survey, we can't simply put on our website, but we really need to provide direct notice to students and families. And then, as before, parents must be given the opportunity to review the survey and to opt their students out of participating in the survey. This policy also is reviewed with every teacher who is going through their master's program. We know many of our post-bac laureate programs require research of some sort, and so I meet now by Google Meet, which is great, with every teacher who has submitted a master's program to be considered for advancement on the salary schedule. We review this policy and pretty explicit with them what we do and don't allow for approval of surveys. Any teacher who is going to do a survey has to have that survey approved by their building principal. It then comes to the district office, and either Mary Jo or myself review that, and then it goes on to the superintendent for review. So we like to be pretty adamant in following that policy, and teachers have been really great about it and appreciate that information. Policy 413. This policy on harassment and violence has been adjusted to, instead of reading a list of protected classes, that language has been taken out and the term protected class has been inserted. So you will see the protected classes crossed out there and that term used throughout this policy. And it is, correct. And it is defined under item D, 3D, the definitions of the protected classifications. It also adds the word discrimination in addition to harassment. And then you'll see, on page, under section 6, school district action, item B, targets or victims and alleged perpetrators of harassment or violence must be notified. So not just parents or guardians, but the students themselves. And this also will reference policy 522 and how that process has changed. And then, if you remember, a few weeks ago, we updated the maltreatment of minors policy, and that statute is referenced under Article 9, harassment or violence as abuse, and then the legal changes. Policy 514, the bullying prohibition policy. The policy has not changed except for spelling out some legal references, such as Minnesota statute, and then a few adjustments to the legal references. Other than that, there's no changes to that policy. Policy 522 is a policy we've had for a long time. Title IX was passed in 1972, 50 years of this as it impacted schools. However, the last administration at the federal level has substantially changed the process. So Title IX, sex non-discrimination, is still in statute and federal law. And what the last administration has done is defined for us the process for handling formal complaints of sexual harassment. And so the policy has grown from 3 pages to, what are we at, 16? Because the entire process is defined. And we are currently using this process, and it's now defined because the old policy said you had to have a process, so we have been adopting this process the last 2 years. It changed again this last summer, and we know the new administration has already come forward with some proposed changes. So what we did, there is a lot in this policy, but I don't know if we can click on the flow chart. This is on our website. All of these processes and procedures are in English and Spanish on our website. We will update these as soon as the board approves this policy, and we'll be doing some training on the changes. But the Title IX process, we took a flow chart, and there's a lot more to this, but basically what this says is it's a very transparent, very due process heavy process that the Office for Civil Rights has given every school district in the nation. And it starts with a student or staff member or a parent, or the district can, if they are made aware of a complaint of sexual harassment, they can do a couple of things. They can provide supportive measures. They provide information to the employee or the family. And then we need to decide, do you want to file a formal complaint? And that is a formal written complaint to the district with detail as to what happened, where it happened. If the individual wants to do that, then we take that complaint. It comes to my office. I meet with the superintendent. And we talk to the individual about that complaint. At that point, they may decide, you know what, I don't want to go through the full investigation. I just want, way on the left there, I just want to have some supportive measures. I don't want to do the full investigation, but I might not want to be in the class with somebody who is harassing me. I might not want to, be in the same lunch period. What can we do to support that individual? We might just do a disciplinary review of it. Is it a code of conduct violation? So we go alongside and investigate potentially what happened, and maybe the individual is fine with that. Or they might want to say, you know what, I'm glad you're doing that code of conduct violation, but I want to file a formal complaint and a full investigation launched to see if not only is that behavior inappropriate for school, but does it rise to the level of sexual harassment under Title IX? And then in that case, again, work with the superintendent, and we look at filing, taking that complaint, and then it is signed by the parent or guardian. So you'll see, we have to have a formal complaint to move forward. So when someone says, I don't want to tell you, I don't want to give my name to you, but I want something done. We can do that. We can help that student as best we can within limits and provide those supportive measures. But this policy, this procedure from the Office for Civil Rights says you have to have a formal complaint. And so if somebody isn't willing to step forward and tell us, your name, what happened, it makes it more difficult for us. Now, that doesn't mean if we have, as Principal Dibble said, we have video and we might see something on that video, then we would file that complaint and move forward on that. But this is a very transparent process. And if we file the complaint, we will tell the student or the employee the complaint has been filed. If a student or an employee files a complaint, we have to tell the person they're filing that complaint against who filed that complaint and what it is about. It is very transparent. So now both sides get to know who filed the complaint, who is it against. The superintendent then decides who's going to investigate that. It won't be me as the Title IX coordinator. He will determine which administrator in the district will conduct that investigation. That investigation takes place. Again, it's very transparent. Parents are called if a student is going to be interviewed, and we talk to employees if they're going to be interviewed, so that they know everything really, that summary of what they said during that interview becomes known to both sides of that investigation. And we do have some parents who say, my child will not be interviewed. And that's their right, because their name does go to both parties when they're interviewed. All of these steps are laid out in our process. The investigation takes place. Now, at any time, the person who filed the complaint can say, you know what, I'm withdrawing my complaint. And then we're done. If the person who used to be was employed with us leaves, then we're done. If the student leaves the district, then we're done. But we continue on with the investigation. If it's 2 students or 2 staff members, we could do an informal resolution as well, but not if it's a teacher who is being accused by a student. There'll be no informal resolution. So investigation occurs. That information then comes back to district office, to me. The superintendent then appoints somebody else to look at the report to make a decision. I help provide them guidance, but the decision, and in our case, we are using 2 people to look at that report and make a decision. Did this event happen as reported? Does it rise to the level of sexual harassment? We then send that information with the report, with all the names of people who have been interviewed and their statements, then go to both sides and we make a resolution. And then we take action if there needs to be additional action. And then the person who maybe has been, either side then can file an appeal. And then the superintendent will appoint somebody else who will look at that appeal information. So it is a very transparent process. It has been, again, comes to us from the Office for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Education. It is there to keep schools safe for students and employees, but it is a new process for us, and it is very due process heavy, but we are working through this, and we have used it in a couple of situations, and so to have it in policy, this process, again, we'll be able to push that out to our website. It is, all of these pieces are on our website, including the reporting form in English and Spanish, and then, of course, if we have other languages, we can take that report with our success coaches or translators. Questions?
I might add that all of these policies are on our website if you have the skill and patience to dig them out.
They are. But we do have a separate area for Title IX reporting. Right now it's on our HR page, but we will link from our parent-student tools at some point here.
All right. As I suggested at the beginning, yes, Jill, you have a, well, let's put a motion on the floor, and then we can have questions and discussion. Dave.
To approve all policies as written, stated, and read tonight.
Seconded by Kim. Now, any discussions or questions? Jill.
Yes, so the bullying prohibition policy is just for students and student groups perpetrating. But the harassment and violence and the Title IX, those are for either students or staff. Is that correct? Perpetrating or complaints against either students or staff?
Correct.
And with those 2, at what point is the board notified of the situation? If it's I guess in any case, but I'm thinking more specifically employees.
So, all of these processes begin with what's called a Tennyson warning, and we inform employees if they, what is the allegation, and then what policy does it violate, and then we move down, and the last item is who gets informed of this. And so the board is informed if we would be able to take a personnel action that would require board action. And as we talked in our policy meeting, certainly that was part of something that happened in the last school year where the board would take action. Other than that, when it's strictly a personnel issue, I would defer to the superintendent when that would need to be reported. This policy, or this procedure, is very clear that the respondent or the person being accused is not guilty of anything until a final resolution is determined. So we want to make sure we protect the rights of both sides here as guided by the Office for Civil Rights.
And with any personnel issue, generally, when it comes to the superintendent, then specifically, then that would the board be notified then since they're the supervisor, or not? And not unless it's a personnel action.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so when you think of, the governance and the management, so we would definitely take care of through HR the necessary outcomes or responses. Then if it needs board action, then we bring it to the board, and that's where the governance piece comes in.
Thank you.
Back to the flow chart. Is there ever a time when individuals from outside the school district would step in to participate in investigations, or is it always handled within the district?
So I would think in the case of it, so sexual assault would fall under this policy. So then, of course, we would inform law enforcement. There most likely would be, in that case, certainly legal counsel to discuss. And again, that's the superintendent's decision.
Yeah, and that's a good follow-up question. So there are a lot of variables, but this is a very thorough and, as stated, very transparent process that takes several days. Then when you start getting in the layer of needing outside guidance or to the potential support of law enforcement as necessary, then that's where we vote them in as well.
Other questions, comments? None? All right. It has been moved and seconded that we approve these policies that have been reviewed. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0. It looks like we have exhausted, as well as being exhausted, the agenda. I would announce that our next meeting is Monday, December 5th at 6 o'clock, according to what is printed here. And we have, for the purpose, I guess, of a truth and taxation hearing, which is scheduled at 6 o'clock, and then our study session will follow. All right, so I'll see you on December 5th. Meeting is adjourned.